Welcome to another exciting episode of the Insurance Untangled podcast. My name is Ben Tu, and I'm one of the co-hosts of this podcast. And we've really dedicated this podcast to helping dental practices that are sort of tangled up with insurance. We include lots of topics as it pertains to business in general in dentistry, but most, important aspects of insurance that sort of help us resolve issues to make our futures a little bit better, cleaner, less stressful as it pertains to dealing with insurance in general. Today I have my good friend, so I'm doing this from Hawaii, but my good friend Naren is at his office in Toronto. So we're sort of spread out throughout the world today to deliver you today's episode. So Naren, how are you, my friend?
I'm doing great, Ben. Looking forward to this conversation. I think it's going to be a fun topic.
Yeah. So I appreciate you taking time here to sort of carve out this topic of this is a topic. Let me read it. It's are you a dentist who runs a business? Or are you a business person who happens to be a dentist? And one of the fun things about this particular topic, Naren, is that more and more dental schools are implementing business programs like MBA programs, business schools. And I think this is very important simply because, when you talk about private practice, you cannot escape the clinical component or the business component, right? They kind of go hand in hand. So, in your mind, why is this topic really important?
It's a great question because having worked with dental practices going back to 2007, this didn't click, because I came from the business side, right? I studied computer science. I worked for large companies. I was worked for product management teams and, marketing teams and so forth. So I didn't really understand that, you're owning and running a business, but you are not necessarily a business person first, right? Only after a while I realized, and I, especially after I started running podcasts and stuff, I realized dentists, go to dental school not necessarily to be business people, but rather to make a difference in the lives of others, right? A lot of times they have a story where when they were young, somebody they looked up to who happens to be a dentist, and they wanted to follow that person's footsteps. Could be a family friend, could be your own father or somebody you're related to, but all kinds of ways they meet somebody who made an impression, and they're like, I want to be like that man or woman, right? That's how they get into this. So helping people, doing great medicine, that's what drives them. Now, when they go to dental school, at least historically speaking, for the last decades and decades and decades, you are taught the clinical and the skills to be successful, so you to do great dentistry. And I think a lot of dental schools almost beat you up to a point where you even feel like you're not good enough because there's always a way to get better. So they get so focused on that, and then they, especially when they make that jump to run their own practices, they realize, and many don't even realize or don't change, that they have to master business. They have to focus on it. So a lot of times, even today, I would say a vast majority of practices are dentists who are running a business versus person who happens to be a dentist. I don't think you need to be on both ends of the spectrum, but typically that's what I'm noticing. Like probably 80% of practice owners are dentists, who run a business because they have to, and almost like they're doing it unwillingly, not really focusing on it, not really giving it the attention, versus the other group where they love business and they love growing things, and they see dentistry as a great market. They see dentistry as a great opportunity to do a lot of good, and of course make money and create the life they want. So
Yeah.
I don't think one is right or one is wrong. It's just that understanding who you are, understanding how you see things would help you, hopefully, work on your strengths, but at the same time, not ignore your weaknesses or not ignore your, blind spots.
Yeah, that makes sense. Do you think that the trend of more on the dentist and a business person, that trend is on the rise over the last 10 years in dentistry?
I think you are right. At least in the recent past, there has been a lot more awareness and a lot more focus, but still it's nothing compared to what needs to be done, at least in the parts of schools and so forth. Like I know Gary Tackers, who we both know, for a long time, at least in the last several years, taught the business side, at a dental school in Arizona, right? So some schools are starting to realize that at the end of the day, you're going to live and breathe business. What is a business, right? You have a profit and loss statement. You have to bring in revenue, you have to pay bills, and then hopefully you have something left over. You have to have teams, right? You have to hire people, you have to manage people, you have to fire people, you have to understand the laws that govern all of these things, from privacy to, employee laws and all kinds of stuff, right? So you are a business owner. But I think slowly but surely, more and more people are focusing on it. But I still think, a vast majority of practice owners are not trained, nor do they have that time or mindset to, succeed in it.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. Yeah. But what if you're a business person who happens to be a dentist? So in your 17 years in dentistry, Naren, what would be your advice for a person like that in terms of today's world of business and dentistry?
Yeah, so typically what I notice is the business person who happens to be a dentist starts by asking the question that most business people ask: what's my objective? What am I trying to do here? And usually the answer is one of two things. One is, I want to work less and enjoy life. Or the other thing is, I want to build an empire, meaning I want to have the first, second, third, fourth, fifth, X number of locations. And I want to, create net worth. So if one practice is worth $1 million, five practices are worth 5 million. Or if I'm making 200,000 in net profit, how do I make $1 million in net profit? So it's all about either growth or about lifestyle. So like, I want to work less. I'll only work 2 days a week or 3 days a week because, I want to ski or I want to spend time with my daughter and, whatever that case might be. So how do I create a business where I don't have to be here tied to, tied to the tied to seeing patients day in and day out, but rather my team can take care of patients. So that's typically, where they start. Now, the ones who love business, who enjoy business, like anything else, they start learning more about business, meaning they go to take classes, they have mentors, they, have people who they work with, who they look up to as, great business people who happen to be, running dental practices. And then they continue to grow and grow. They go to events, they go to meetings, and that's what they do. I'm not saying that's right or wrong. These types of individuals, they love, the clinical side, but that's not their passion. Their passion is not being the best dentist, so they might still attend clinical courses and so forth, but that's not where they're going to focus on. They're rather going to focus on growing their business skills and business strengths. So I think if you're one of those people, I think, do what I have seen doctors do in that bucket over the last 17 years, get mentors, figure out what your goals are, and then, like any business person, come up with a plan to achieve those goals and go after those goals. And of course, continue to learn and grow because you always can improve as a business person.
Yeah, no, that's excellent. So for that sort of mindset there, Naren, like the clinicians, right? A lot of the dentists call the professors at dental schools super dentists, right?
Yeah.
And they just want to do clinical. They love it, right? So if you happen to be in that bucket where you're a dentist, but also you're a dentist that runs a business, what are sort of the strengths and weaknesses that you see with doctors that love clinical, but they run the business as well?
Yeah, the strengths are, I think they do excellent dentistry, right? They love dentistry, like you said. They're always learning and improving themselves on the clinical side. Just like the business-oriented folks have business mentors, they have clinical mentors. They go to clinical courses. They dedicate themselves for it, right? That's their strengths. In terms of weaknesses, I think maybe they don't give enough time and attention to the business side of their practice. What I mean by that is they don't have time to work on the business. For example, I'm sure some of you may have read the book E-Myth, right? And it talks about, working in the business versus working on the business. Working in the business is you have, you're working on inside your patient's mouth. That's working in the business, right? You are an employee pretty much at that point. Working on the business is, okay, how do we take care of patients? What's our process for taking care of a new patient? How do we do this? So that is working on the business, coming up with the process, making sure everybody's trained on it, making sure you're doing a good job in applying that process. That is working on the business. So one of the weaknesses I notice is that they don't give it enough time, to work on the business, and B, they don't know what to work on. In other words, successful business owners don't do 100 things. They find out 5 or 6 things that are critical, and they make sure those 5 or 6 things are going well. Another weakness I see is they make decisions for the wrong reasons. Like, for example, let's say you're walking at night and you drop your diamond ring, right? Now, you search for the ring, and somebody walks up to you and say, hey, why are you looking for the ring here? Oh, I'm looking for the ring here because that's where the light is. But what if you drop the ring, 100 meters away where there's no light? You're not going to find the ring by looking at the wrong place. You have to look at the right place. So sometimes they make the wrong decisions, like, as opposed to making the right decisions, so looking at the right place, so to speak, right? An example could be, something close to home. Like, I had a conversation with a client today. This particular client is getting, 56 new patient calls a month, and they are growing. They want to double their practice from X million to double that amount of money. They want to bring in an associate, but they were thinking of not working with us because of a issue with the way things are written to make Google happy, because without Google, you are not going to get the traffic, right? But once I explained it to them, they understood, right? I mean, I need this marketing machine because I'm going to double my practice, and I'm a fee for service practice already. So marketing is key, and it's already working. So just because there's a tiny issue in, like, the way I want content versus the way Google wants content, I don't want to mess up what's like doing extremely well, right? But unfortunately, I think business people have an appreciation for what is important, what is not, as opposed to people who are clinical, just because that's not the way they think, they don't. So, surrounding yourself with mentors to fill in those weaknesses, right? People who can, like, it's almost like, I don't know anything about medicine. So when something happens in my family, I talk to people I trust about what they would do if they were in my shoes, because I am not the expert. So surrounding yourself with mentors who you can rely on, who you trust, to kind of help you, give you that, third-party perspective, and then being open to that, right? Because your instincts could be totally wrong. Like, imagine if I were to do medicine on my own family's, I think, they'll be in big trouble, right? Because I don't know. I haven't thought about it. I haven't spent time on it. I'm not the expert. So anyway, so that's kind of my 2 cents.
Yeah, that's excellent. I think in the environment that we live in today in dentistry, you see more super clinicians that run businesses, right? And this is not an insult on their business skills. It's naturally, as human beings, we focus on what we love, right? And we want to stick to what we love. And many times when you're in that bucket, you look at the business and the running of a business as a necessary evil. It's not what you enjoy, but you do it because it's necessary. So as it pertains to that, Naren, what advice do you have for dentists in that category, in terms of the do's and don'ts? But let's start with the do's. What are things that you would recommend? So you mentioned mentors. Have that box checked. What are some other do's that you would recommend there?
Yeah, have time to work on the business. Maybe the Fridays, that's the day you work on the business, right? Put it into your calendar and think about what are some of the 3 or 4 things you want to work on, right? For you to be successful, maybe you need a marketing machine. So do you have the right marketing company? What are the right metrics to look at? Are those metrics improving? Perhaps you need a good new patient experience. What is your new patient experience? Do you have time to work on it? Who's going to help you with that? So really start, A, have the time, B, start thinking about the 5 or 6 things you have to get right for your practice to succeed, and then start working on them, using that time. And then come up with metrics that are important so that you know if things are getting better or not. For marketing, how many new patients are you getting? How many Google reviews do you have? What percentage of the new patients who are calling are booking appointments versus not booking appointment? Conversion rate. What are the metrics, right? Because now once you have a metric, whether it's a $5 million practice or a $1 million practice, you know whether things are moving in the right direction or not. Is your conversion rate going up? Is your new patient numbers going up? How many new patients do you need? So those are some of the tips I would have in terms of do's.
That's great advice there on the do's, Naren. What about the don'ts? What should you avoid or at least look out for as a clinician that runs a business?
Yeah, the don'ts, I kind of alluded to in terms of weaknesses. Like, for example, not making, like, I love this phrase that Steve Jobs always used to use, anytime he tries to explain something. He says, what's the higher order bit? In other words, what's the most important thing that, for me to succeed? So, for example, in that decision, right, what is the most important thing that I should be looking at? Like, for example, if I'm getting a lot of new patients, but I don't like the way the articles are written because of Google, that's not the most important bit, because think about it, right? You want new patients. You may not like the style, but again, you're not the person who's your patient. Your patient is totally different. The patients like it and they're calling your office and they're booking appointments. It's working, right? It's just that you're not used to
Yep.
how they live or how they work or how Google works. That's okay. We don't have to be all experts in everything. So, like, when you're making decisions, don't make the wrong decisions because you're not able to think about it correctly. That's why I think leaning on those mentors, especially the business mentors who you trust, because sometimes they will show you things you didn't see, right? For example, especially when things are going right, it's great. When you have a bad day and stuff, it's not great. Another example I see is, I see, again, it doesn't happen with all the clinicians who happen to be business owners, but some of them, I see that they're always caught up in the drama. Always they have some issue going on. Like, this person quit, that person didn't show up. But typically business people know that is part of business. People not showing up, people quitting is part of business. So you don't
Right.
let that affect you working on your goals. You don't let that affect you, taking one step forward and next step forward in terms of your business goals. You just keep moving forward. So building that muscle of, like, not getting caught up by the drama or by whatever is happening today, and rather just being able to focus. So that's another, I guess, a don't get caught up on the drama. Just expect it. It's like, imagine you are a dad, right? I mean, you are a dad. I mean, or a mom. You're gonna have challenges. Every day with your kid is not rosy. Sometimes you get called into the principal's office, and some days the kid is winning a trophy, and some days he doesn't wake up in the morning, and it's just life, right? So just accept it and still stay focused. I think that is something I would really, because a lot of times doctors get caught up in it, and then the team creates an environment where they just pull the doctor into that drama, and then everybody's in the drama, so nothing is moving forward. So anyways, I hope these tips are useful.
No, that's amazing. I think about that all the time in terms of that balance, on figuring out how to keep the business running in a way where you don't get burnt out. And I can't imagine being a clinician and a business owner at the same time, almost two different worlds, right? And business, of course, is stressful, clinical is stressful, but the advice that you shared, Naren, is excellent. And I know, so last question here is, we all know that you do marketing. What advice do you have for dentists that operate a business as it pertains to the world of marketing?
Yeah, absolutely. I think this applies to any part of your business. Find out where you are. So, have an expert review how you are doing. So you could book what we call a marketing strategy meeting. And then through that meeting, you can find out how you are doing with marketing. The link is insuranceuntangled.com/MSM, insuranceuntangled.com/MSM. Book that marketing strategy meeting, find out where you are. We'll also give you a plan, like, how do you go from wherever you are to the top 5% of Google SEO? So you get the report card plus the plan, and then decide what you're going to do, right? That's the key for success in business, right? You need to know where you are, and you need to come up with a plan, and then the plan needs to have dates, and you need to accomplish the plan. That's really, in a nutshell. And you can apply this for everything. If your new patient experience is great, keep it. If not, what is it today? What do you want it to be? What's your plan to get there? Timelines, who's going to do it, etc., etc. Insuranceuntangled.com, MSM is that link.
That's excellent. Funny thing is, I actually spoke to a client that went through that with you, I think a couple of weeks ago with your team. And immediately following that meeting, I had another client that has been using you for a year. And the feedback from that client is that the amount of investment spent with the amount of patients, new patients that we're able to track that came from the marketing strategy meetings that was put together, and the fulfillment of that plan he said it was the best money he's ever spent as a business owner. And he's one of those doctors that he loves clinical dentistry. So operating the business is sort of not necessarily a burden, but it's, like I said, it's a necessary evil. It's a must do, but it's not one that you enjoy. And the marketing is sort of an anomaly to this particular doctor. And so the feedback that I wanted to share with regards to doctors that are listening to this podcast and doing these marketing strategy meetings is that the feedback, like the best money spent, is quite amazing. So thank you, Naren, and your team for what you guys do. Highly encourage those of you listening that may need to look at that the new patient component with the economy where it's at. Equa is a great resource, and that marketing strategy meeting is a great resource to at least explore. So any closing thoughts, Naren, as we sort of wrap up today's episode?
Yeah, I think know yourself, whether you are a business owner who enjoys dentistry or vice versa. And then based on that, build on your strengths, and at the same time, make sure those blind spots are taken care of, right? Because we are who we are. That's a blessing. It's nothing wrong with that. We just need to now adapt based on who we are. So that's my final thought.
Thank you, Naren. It's always great chatting with you and picking your brain, especially on this important topic of being a clinician and a business owner. Really great advice. And so thank you for our listeners for tuning in for another amazing episode of the Insurance Untangled podcast. If you enjoyed today's episode, don't forget to like this episode, share it on social media, help other dentists find this content. Also give us a review, and check us out on any podcast platform that you use. And don't forget to visit insuranceutangled.com for more freebies. We have webinars that we do quarterly, so check those out. And then quick announcement, we are on YouTube now. So check out our YouTube channel is at Insurance Untangled. Hit the notification bell to stay tuned to the latest episodes. Until next time, folks, thank you for tuning in, and we look forward to chatting with you again here next week. Have a good one.